Yeah, okay. Good evening. The planning board meeting for Tuesday, May 2nd will come to order. A few of our public hearings will be continued, and we won't be hearing information on them tonight. The Kindred Homes 1099 Salem will be carried over, and 58 Country Club Circle will be carried over.
So they're carried over to our next regularly scheduled meeting
Yeah.
at this point. So on May 16th, which is town meeting, we will not have a
That
regularly
is,
scheduled.
yes,
It'll
that
only
is
be the warrant
correct.
articles.
Okay. And there will be one that we will open the hearing, but we won't take any testimony, 1975 Salem Street. And beyond that, that's what we got. So, okay, with that in mind, 102 South Bradford Street, what's going on here?
Okay, so this is the application for a watershed special permit. The applicant proposes to construct a 440 square foot addition and 168 square foot screened-in porch off of the existing home in the non-disturbance and non-discharge zone. At the last public hearing, there was some questions about the gross floor area and a second floor addition that was placed on the house and permitted in 1999. Through further research after that meeting, it was found that a special permit was received for that particular addition for a 25% increase. And also, a watershed special permit was granted by the planning board at that time in 1999. So, but the bylaw was different during that time. In 1999, the bylaw stated construction of any accessory structure or expansion of an existing structure, 25% or more of the gross floor area of the existing structure. Now we know that in 2006, the bylaw has since changed, and we have the two components that if it's larger than 2,500 square feet, you get 50%, and if it's, you get 25%, and if it's less than 2,500 square feet, you get 50%. And that, again, came into play in 2006. So the building commissioner has submitted comments concerning the gross floor area, and the applicant's attorney is here to speak on behalf.
So what is the position of our council about what they're allowed or not allowed to do?
Well, we haven't necessarily gotten an opinion from town council, but we've gotten...
What does the building inspector say?
But the building, yes, the building commissioner had stated that the gross floor area, in his opinion, is the main dwelling, which would be the bottom floor and the top floor, and excludes the breezeway and the garage.
Okay, and so what does that mean?
And that's that square footage effective with the 2006 change. So the existing building in 2006 was 1,836 square feet, if I remember. So that's what he has determined to be the effective square footage, which now they can come and apply against.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so the 2006 bylaw change was 2 existing structures at that time.
Okay, so building inspector thinks this is in conformity?
He thinks it's within the parameters of the 50%
Yeah, no, that's fine.
increase based on that square footage calculation.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I mean, we should get something from town council as well, but I just want to, so he's saying it's okay.
So, yes, his determination on square footage was included in your packet.
Okay.
In terms of which components of the house he includes.
Yeah. Okay.
Those were prior.
Yep, okay. Okay, so with that in mind, please speak.
Good evening. For the record, John Smolak, attorney for Greg Penny, the applicant. With me this evening is John Moran of Moran Cameron Group, our project engineer. I've been involved only since late last week, and I understand John had made a presentation in terms of the proposed addition and the like. But since Thursday, Rebecca and Jean and Don Belanger are kind enough to sit and meet and discuss the issues that you had raised at the last meeting. I was able to read the minutes and get up to speed in terms of the issues that were of concern. And not to repeat what Rebecca and Jean had indicated, I guess the 2 issues were how do you define gross floor area? And the second issue is how do you define existing building? From what point do you take the square footage and calculate your 50% from? And so, as was discussed, gross floor area is the first and the second floor of the primary area of the building, excluding porches and breezeways. So So that leaves us with a square footage of 1,872 square feet. And since the square footage is less than 2,500 square feet, we're able to expand up to 50% of the existing building, which would be 932 square feet. In this case, we're only expanding 400 square feet, so a little under 25% of the building, the gross floor area is being expanded in this situation. So I think that with that discussion from the building inspector, although we don't have a formal opinion, you know, I think that this proposed expansion does fit in within the watershed district regulations in terms of an expansion in this circumstance.
Okay, okay. Any questions from the board on the legal and the zoning issue involved? Pete, do you have comment? All right.
No, just clarification on, as we've been discussing the square footage issue. Otherwise, I have no other concerns or
Okay.
comments.
Okay, I think they clarified that, so, Lynn?
No.
Okay,
So
So-
I would recommend, like John said, maybe a more formalized response from the building commissioner on that.
that would be a written,
And maybe confirm with town council regarding the 2006 establishment of the,
yeah. So
the-
in
of the
terms
existing
of,
structure.
let's, if we assume for a second that this passes muster, are there any substantive questions related to this special permit that we have open?
based on the proposal last week, I think John Moran covered in terms of the scope of the addition, the screen porch, and the distances from the wetlands.
Okay. And we have, remind me again, is there going to be, is it all going to be routed into the ground in terms of the drainage from the addition?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
And it was going to take some of the existing roof as well,
Yeah, actually,
which isn't treated.
The way the existing gutter system works, the proposed stormwater system, we're actually going to end up getting some of the existing roof as well. And the leach chamber that was designed, the infiltration chamber was designed to accept that as well.
Yeah.
So not only are we getting the impervious coverage from the proposed addition and the covered porch, but we're getting some of the roof runoff from the back of the roof, which has no place to go once you put the addition on it.
Yeah,
So we
okay.
had to kind of design it to accept that.
Okay. Any questions?
Actually, one just popped in my mind. In terms of the screened porch, does that have a foundation,
It's just a slab.
just a slab?
The proposed addition actually has a full basement, but the screen porch will be slab construction, so it will have a 4-foot frost wall.
Okay.
But there's no basement under that.
Is it true screen, or are there any plans to put windows? Is it going to be 4-season, or is it envisioned as more of a
It's
2 to
envisioned
3
more of
season?
a 3-season porch, no heat.
Okay. Okay. Lynn, any questions?
No.
If none, then why don't we just prepare this, assuming we get the letters in hand and everything, just prepare this, get town council's opinion, but assuming it, if it is consistent, let's vote it next time.
It'll be at the June 6th meeting.
I did have some email correspondence from the building inspector, but I guess it's better to formalize that. It's
Yeah,
his-
we'll just
it's
put it
his
in
decision,
writing and,
yeah.
yeah, we'll take care of it the next time, so,
Okay,
thank you.
great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, the next public hearing is for 1665 Great Pond Road.
This is another application for a watershed protection district special permit, but this is for modification. Back in April 5th of 2016, the board authorized the reconfiguration and replacement of existing, we had allowed for the demolition of an existing single-family home and the construction of a new single-family dwelling unit with a reconstructed upper driveway that will tie into the existing driveway, and they would not touch the lower half of the driveway. So this is a modification to that permit because as part of that decision, we actually conditioned that if somebody were to touch the bottom half of the driveway, they'd have to come into the planning board for a modification. So we did take before pictures, before they did any construction, and we had those in the packet for you to see. And then Jean did go out for a site visit after the fact to make sure that the driveway was still in good condition. And so essentially, this is going to be for the lower half of the driveway, with the stormwater mitigation to help protect the runoff down to the road and across to the lake. It is also to expand the patio beyond what was already proposed and to also put in an in-ground pool. So we got so because there was a brand new pool, that's a new structure in the watershed as deemed by the building commissioner, so the applicant is before the ZBA for that. He is also before the Conservation Commission for an RDA for the driveway component. They had a meeting on April 26th, and the Conservation Commission had decided to hold on their decision until the planning board decided to rule. The stormwater review has taken place. There's been some back and forth between TEC and the applicant, and they have pretty much closed up the stormwater review, but they did leave 2 items open for the board to decide. One was that there was no confirmation of soil conditions by a witness and whether the board felt as though they wanted to pursue that. And the second one was that the consultant recommended permeable pavers for the pool area, and the applicant had said that he had had some issues with that in the past and had actually proposed to do an 18-inch wide infiltration trench around that particular area. And the consultant had confirmed that the calculations all worked out and it was in fact okay, but they just wanted to make sure that the board was okay with the alteration in terms of what we usually suggest.
Okay. Good. Do you have some pictures for us?
You want some pictures?
I want some, yes. You
Is
have to
there-
have
is there any-
pictures.
I guess we don't have any up.
Do you have,
up on the screen.
we just put anything, it would be just good to see what's being proposed here.
No one needs a locus, right, for this property at this
No,
point?
not the locus,
Okay.
but just
Luckily, you're not
the,
the same applicant.
I don't know. I mean, do we have any
Do you
any
want the
topos
plans?
or plans?
Do you
Can
want
we,
plans?
can we just flash the plans up?
You want me to jump
So
in, John?
as far as the driveway condition, are you taking pictures which were?
Yeah, Tom, that's fine, as long as we can just get some, I just would like to see something,
So the driveway condition was to make sure that it hasn't further deteriorated, and I took pictures at the time we issued the permit, and I did a recent site visit, and I wouldn't consider it having deteriorated more. However, I would concur that it is in need of improvement, so.
oh, beautiful.
Okay, Rebecca, that was a good comprehensive
Right.
introduction, so there's not much for me to cover other than to elaborate a little bit on the plan, I guess. I know that the board is familiar with this property from prior applicants' work and permitting requests. There's really two components to this proposed modification. One is to do the driveway work that really should have been included or should have been thought through initially.
Well, let's thought through.
Well, it should have been applied for
We
at
begged,
at that
pleaded,
time.
and requested they do it at the same time.
Again, I'll reintroduce myself as the new applicant. In any event,
Yeah, go ahead. We're just-
the proposal on the driveway is essentially to intercept the vast majority, as you can see, of the paved surface area up there with a trench drain. And that trench drain then directs the runoff from that paved area into an infiltration bed that's on the east side of the driveway. The lower portion of the driveway below that, again, and this proposed improvement to the existing conditions was discussed at length with John Borghese as to how to best work with what is there and improve what's there. So the lower portion of the driveway, in any event, he wanted that runoff directed to the east, away from the drop inlet that's on the west side of the driveway, which was actually non-functioning because it was completely encased with organic material. But so that lower portion of the driveway will be super elevated to direct water to the depressed east shoulder along Route 133, along Great Pond Road. The other things that we had proposed in there, and this was just as a show of good faith, knowing the history, was to take out a little bit of the pavement that wasn't necessary down there to reduce a little bit of the pervious area down at the radius at the intersection. And something that we did not put on this request, but we'd like to have integrated into the decision, is the removal of the what I call the prison walls that are down at the entrance area there. There's a couple of pretty ugly brick walls that are deteriorated. The caps have gone. The top bricks are exposed, and water's infiltrating into those. We don't want to excavate. We just want to get rid of them down to ground level and then just loam and seed or sod right over them.
Are they in the photos that you provided?
Yes, they're definitely in the photos.
Okay.
This?
Yeah.
They're not?
Exactly.
Okay.
Lack of any other description, I would call them decorative walls. They
Okay.
With scare quotes on it?
don't retaining walls by any means. They're
No.
just-
They're there to support the iron gates, which are
Yeah.
twisted and rusted and
Yeah.
kind of ugly
Okay.
and all of that. So in any event, the other component is, of course, the proposed larger patio and pool area in the back, which this is I think for me, the fourth proposed pool installation in the watershed with the same parameters and conditions. We've taken the same approach as we always have in the past, assuming that was still the preferred approach, which was to provide an infiltration trench around all of the impervious areas. And that's really it. It's relatively simple and straightforward.
Okay.
Just for sake of orientation, when you say that the driveway will drain to the east, is that plan right?
That's plan right,
Yeah,
yes,
okay.
yeah. And there's actually, I think, pictures in there that show that shoulder. It's slightly depressed. What John had suggested, and which I think makes sense, is that that shoulder can handle quite a bit of runoff anyway. And it does perk. It doesn't really hold water any length of time, so it does perk. It does filter, and it doesn't have to be disturbed. The infiltration bed was placed, I mean, again, just, I guess, standard practice. We didn't put that infiltration system further down the driveway because then we'd end up in the right-of-way, and as is typically the case, DPW doesn't want any drainage facilities in the right-of-way. So that's why we located it there above the walls.
Are you expanding with the pool? Are you expanding the edge of clearing from before?
No, there's no clearing really here. There's two trees that you can see in the infiltration bed. I took pictures of them. They're in there. They're evergreens, although there's really not green on them. I wanted to
Ever
just-
did?
And if the board wants me to, I'll certainly replace those with 4 good-sized plantings, as I mentioned in the correspondence and in the response. I mean, they have to be removed. They're compromised to begin with, so they should go anyway.
Yeah, okay.
And you presented that to conservation as well.
Yes, the response that I gave to the outside consultant's review has gone to, not only to conservation, they've seen and discussed that, and that response and all of that supporting information, supplemental information has also gone to ZBA, even though I don't think they need it. I just wanted everybody to be looking at the same plan, same pictures, and the same responses.
And you'll be before the ZBA on May 9th, correct?
That's next week, yeah.
Okay. Pete, any questions?
Well, you know, you can hardly get closer to the lake than this, right?
Yep.
So it certainly raises, concern simply because of the acute proximity. I think it's a little frustrating that this has a history of avoiding work on the driveway. And refresh my memory, what was the point of avoiding the work?
They didn't want to go to conservation,
So,
Yeah.
but
Well-
at least now it's getting done right.
Well, Peter, if I can, and I don't want to interrupt, but
no, I
know that-
appreciate your view.
I know that there's some history with that, and I was not involved. I think this board and all the other boards know that we try to do things as comprehensively as possible. That's why I didn't do this sooner, because I didn't want to come back and come back and come back. I wanted to make sure that we knew what we were doing entirely. This is, the driveway doesn't have to be repaved down there. It's totally serviceable. I only proposed doing this because I knew the history. We're trying to improve an existing condition that isn't ideal and make it as ideal as we can.
Right.
With the procedures and policies and practices that we have available to us. So I appreciate and understand how you feel about it and how everybody must have felt about it. But I've never avoided submitting an application to any board.
Yeah. I mean, I think that the driveway part of this is kind of totally benign, given there's a house here. I mean, you can make a broader argument that maybe we shouldn't allow swimming pools, in areas this close to the lake, but our bylaw is what our bylaw is, and this is that's a use that is allowed with special permit. Maybe it should change, but it is the existing use, and we had our consultant look at it, right? The consultant said we're using all the best practices.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask a question about that then. I appreciate your description of the trench drain. So there's another recent construction house along Great Pond Road. It's about a third of the way from this house towards Butcher Boy. And in that case, the driveway has a number of, and I don't have the correct term, but sections perpendicular to the path of the driveway across the whole driveway to intercept. In addition, this is pushing the water to one side to a drainage area, which is great. But that other property also has the, whatever you call those berms across the driveway in multiple locations.
I think they're like pervious interceptor strips.
Yes. And, when we say all possible best practices, you can't get much closer to the lake than this. So what you've shown me is good, but I just think I'm obligated to say my concern is still high. I understand the bylaws is what the bylaw is, but it doesn't get any worse than this in terms of proximity to the lake and impact on the drinking water supply. So
And
can there be other best practices applied, such as at least what appears to be done? Can you help me with this, Gene? What was done on that property?
So that applicant first initially presented porous pavement, which Lisa Eggleston advised not to use porous pavement because in Zone A. So they went to regular pavement, but they do have pervious pavers. I forget, but it might be every 30 feet or so down the driveway. There's 3 of them. And
This is running across the
running
driveway.
across the driveway, and then they have a stone trench running the length of the driveway with water stops or check dams
Right.
every 200.
This is in that.
20 feet.
In that other property.
In that other property that you're referring to.
Right.
And at the bottom of the driveway, there is some pervious pavers that actually swale out to a
Right.
similar design where
Right.
it captures it before getting to Great Pond Road.
So, look, I'm not a stormwater engineer, but when I look at that, I think, okay, there's, maximum application of multiple best practices. Why? Because it is acutely close to the water supply. So I like what I see, but I mean, you yourself use the terminology of applying all possible best practices. Have you
Right.
done that?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, Peter, my family drinks the same water. I care. I've been here my whole life, too, so that's why we're trying to do the right thing.
Which I appreciate.
And I'm not sure if we put in another interceptor, or more interceptors down the driveway, we certainly can do that. We're directing the water where DPW suggested we direct the water. And, again, I'm not sure what those interceptors, what more they do. in this case. I mean,
I think it gives you more capacity in the event of an extraordinary rain event, which certainly we've all seen. And I think it's probably an above and beyond type of thing. So that's what I'm asking. I've seen it in other properties right along this same condition where they're acutely close to the drinking supply, and
So Rebecca researched that whole application. We didn't see any detail behind those pervious strips going across the driveway. We did see the transition from proposed porous pavement to regular pavement. We can certainly talk to the consultant and see if there's, I mean, as long as you don't have an opposition. I mean, this trench drain is not in the other application.
I'm not asking you to get
proposed
rid of
it
the
different.
trench drain. That's
no,
great.
I think that's a big,
Correct.
a big issue, a big
I
item.
would say that's the primary.
Right.
What I'm asking is, are there additional best practices that you can apply? And there's an example down the street, and I'm asking if that's possible in addition to the trench drain.
Well, do you folks know, the board or, or staff know those interceptor strips? Are they directed to some sort of a catchment system, or are they just into a stone shoulder?
It appears to be the stone shoulder, but we'd have to actually do some more research on that.
Well, I mean, in the interest of getting to resolution, which of course I'd like to, I mean,
Sure.
this is what we do for a living. Doing more construction work is generally not that challenging. I mean, it's really just a question of knowing what to do and why we're doing it. There's about, as Gene, you sort of measured off the other day, there's about 60 feet, which of area before the right-of-way. If the practice down the street was to put in an interceptor strip every 30 feet, I mean, I'll do one every 20 feet. It doesn't really matter to me, and we'll direct it into a stone channel, again, on the east side.
Right?
And so it will filter, and it'll get to its ultimate destination that was planned with this plan as it was presented. It'll still get to the same place, but it may, maybe that will offer a little bit more protection.
How much flow are we talking about here? Because looking at the plan, it would seem to be that the grade shoots up, 4 to 5 feet from close to the street to the trench drain?
Right. In fact, and you can see it in the photographs too. I mean,
How wide's the driveway?
where it goes through the gate, it's about 13 or 14 feet.
Okay.
Again, I appreciate what you've come here with the plan. I think it's very good. But our conversation was, all possible best practices, and I'm putting out a question. And
Well,
it's just a question as to whether or not there's an additional best practice that you could apply, and would it make sense? And the answer might be no.
well, I think it can't hurt. It is, I mean, again, I'm acknowledging what you're saying. Again, Peter, I'm a developer, I'm a builder, and I'm a resident. We presented a plan that was discussed at length with DPW. It was reviewed by outside consultants. It was designed by a reputable engineer. I mean, nobody suggested anything else. I know some of these practices. I don't know what every other site in town has done, to mitigate. So this is something that, had it been suggested by the consultant or by DPW, we would have put it in at the outset. I mean, nobody brought it up. You've brought it up, and that's fine. What I'm saying is, why don't I just add it in? I mean, I don't want to delay an otherwise relatively straightforward process.
So, we'll put it in, we'll add it as a condition. Thank
Just
you.
add it in as a condition.
We'll have the consultant review and get back to you if there's any
Yeah.
issues with it.
Yeah, I mean, we'll,
Thank you.
no, I mean, I
Great.
think it's
Thank you for
relatively easy.
raising-
I'm not, again, if it had been brought up before, we would have answered it the same
Well,
way.
it's great to have somebody, coming in with high standards like you do.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Tom,
Okay.
just a question on the location of the trench drain. Is that at the drop-off, the beginning of the steepest point of the grade, or?
That grade is relatively constant.
Okay.
It's relatively constant.
It may make sense to move that down into the middle of where the 20 by 20 concrete stone pad is, to get a little bit closer to the bottom, and it'll still infiltrate evenly throughout that.
Well, yes, however, again, that is where the infiltration bed is located is also sloped, although the
Okay.
consultant suggested we flatten the bottom,
Right.
which made sense, but if it's entering at the highest point, then it
If it-
has
okay, but if they're
more
planning, yeah,
filtration.
right.
Yeah, so
Okay.
I think it's in a logical
Okay.
location as far as that goes.
Okay.
Okay.
And that,
So-
yeah, okay.
So other than that, we should be able to vote this the next time. There's no
Yes,
reason
I
why we
believe
shouldn't be
so.
able to do that. So let's follow up on this one. Hopefully it'll work and we'll go from there. So thank you.
Okay.
No.
Thank you, folks.
Thanks.
Okay.
Okay, 1975 Salem Street, I know you said we're gonna move it on, but we have to hear it. Can you just give a 30-second overview so we acknowledge that we've had a discussion on this?
Yep, this is just an application for a land disturbance permit in connection with the proposed construction of 3 detached single-family homes with site grading, driveways, and service utilities.
So this is associated with the recent frontage exception and common driveway permit that
Yep.
you just
Okay,
approved, and the
good.
A&R plan that was approved?
Yep, okay, so we will, they'll be ready the next
Yep,
Rex
we're ready
regular
to
meeting.
continue at the June 6th meeting.
Yeah, okay, great, okay.
So you open it, continue it to the June 6th.
So that. So then we're going on to the discussions, and we were
So if
going
you-
to have a short discussion on 1211 Osgood first, because the discussion on regional housing will probably take a little bit longer, so.
So if I could just interject first, so the continued open hearing for the annual town meeting zoning articles has not been closed yet. We don't typically close it to the next week, so I've just carried that on the agenda.
Well, yeah, I do want to close this one so I can get the town manager, so he's not mad
Oh,
at
no,
me.
that's the CIP article, so that comes up as part of the discussion, but these are the zoning articles themselves.
Oh,
So
okay,
because we had an additional meeting last week to address 2 of them,
Oh,
you have
yeah.
voted on them all already, but they're still open. We typically close them right before town meeting at
okay,
that meeting.
that's fine,
So I
That's
just
fine.
carried that on the agenda, but I have
Okay.
nothing to report on them.
okay. So 1211 Osgood,
This is just an update in regards to the parking, that's part of the decision that was issued back in October 2014. There was a modification in order to allow a restaurant to be in that particular plaza. The applicant had to submit a parking report at 6 months, and then later at 12 months. He's here to present the parking report for the 12 months. It does show that the lot is at 77% occupancy.
okay, great. It's all yours.
Question, can I add, I know last time I was here, we spoke about an additional 10 seats.
Okay, can you maybe give the presentation first and then do your ask, or I'm
Okay.
just not sure?
I didn't know, but based on the numbers of the thing, if,
It may very well be,
Yeah.
but let's see the facts and circumstances, and then you can
Oh, I
ask.
thought-
what-
up on the board.
Okay.
It's right there.
I think we're about 20% more than where we were.
Can you make that a little bigger?
Yep, I definitely can. And I can also bring up the past report if you would like as well.
So if we look at this,
So that's the 12.
what I'm saying is Friday seems to be the bigger,
Would you like to see the 6 month before the restaurant opened?
oh, sure, why not? Yeah, let's,
When did you open?
We opened end of February, middle of February.
okay. Okay, then go back to the other one.
Yep.
It seems like with the restaurant opening, there's generally a 10 to 15% increase in the demand.
So Friday night's bigger than Saturday, that's interesting.
Okay.
Oh, did he?
Represents 77, and other people was 55.
So the peak is.
Well, there you go.
So, my mathematically inclined friends, what do we think? Hey, you're the science guy, right?
Well, how many parking spaces, I don't think we've gotten there for a modification yet, but I think we need to know what the building inspector would require for parking for 10 more seats for a restaurant before we can, what are they?
No, you're right
yeah,
of that.
What do they use for that number?
Yeah, you're right of that, because I don't know if, I mean, we should be able to do the math pretty quickly, but are there any takeaways just from this?
I mean, right now, it looks like it's okay, but 2 months into a business, you hope that you're gonna double your business as is,
Right. Thing is,
without
our
even
type-
more seats,
right, our
'cause-
type of business, though, it's pizza and roast beef, and it's quick. You're in, you're
Yeah.
out. It's not like lots of eats are there for an hour,
right.
where they soak up a good amount of the parking on, actually on Friday nights, they do soak up a good amount of the parking. Whereas it's, you're in and out, 20 minutes tops, 25 minutes if you're gonna sit down and have a sandwich and leave.
Is the property fully occupied now? Are there any?
It is fully occupied. When
Okay.
the first study was done, obviously, I
You weren't-
wasn't
Yeah,
open
you weren't
yet,
in
so.
yet, right.
And are all businesses open on Friday and Saturday?
The Byron Cyclone Studio is not open on Friday nights and Saturday nights. They're closed on Friday. They don't do classes.
So, can we check what 10 additional seats requires for restaurant? Don't we have that? Right with our bylaw, we should be able to figure that out.
And what time are you open till?
Monday and Tuesday we're open till, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday we're there till 8. Thursday and Friday till 9. Saturdays till 8, and Sundays we're closed.
Oh, so Saturdays is a slow night, huh? So Fridays you're probably busiest?
Yeah.
Friday and Saturday.
Okay. Well, if it was that busy, you wouldn't close at 8. If there was a line out the door,
Right.
you would be open later, so.
Yeah.
I don't think-
Actually, with my research in the area,
Uh-huh.
most of the fast food pizza
Yeah.
places, by 8:30, 9 o'clock, there's not much going
Right.
on.
Yeah.
Everybody's at the loft.
We may
Yeah.
need to go back to the building commissioner just because of the fact that we don't know what he classified it as, because for a restaurant, there's 15 per
You
1,000.
may remember this one.
Yes, they didn't classify it as a
Or is it-
restaurant because he was classifying it almost as
Is it a
a
fast
fast
food?
food, and if he's changing it, yeah.
So just fast food, no drive-through.
Yeah.
So then that would be 15 parking spots per 1,000 square foot of the shop.
And the shop, the total square footage is 2094.
So wait,
Dining area is it's probably split half and half.
So what actually you're proposing doing, maybe you should just, if you can just give us a quick overview of what you would like to do.
I'd just like to add 10 more seats. We have 10 right now, we approved
But
this
if
10.
it's not based on seats, if it's based on square footage,
If that's what he deemed it as, a fast food.
Well, if you remember right, it was a
Bakery.
bakery with 10 seats. We had a restriction on having restaurants on the property.
This is the
Yeah.
same place that has the
Lots of
Thai
these,
restaurant,
yes.
right?
Right.
Yeah, when he bought the place, he didn't realize that restriction, they'd gotten the, waiver on that one spot, he thought he could get it to this spot. So
Okay.
they let him pretty much slide in under the bakery,
Right.
not classifying it as a
So the
restaurant.
bakery had 10,
Right.
and you want to go to 20, is that
Right.
it?
10 more
Okay.
seats.
Okay,
It was part of the discussion last time we were here.
Yeah.
okay.
After we did the
I think we did
Let's
the first.
check, let's do a determination.
I don't remember technically what the previous building commissioner called it, but it was something a little different than the two classifications.
It was something like in between, actually.
Yeah, and
there
I just
wasn't
don't
any-
remember what it was. I wasn't part of it, but I
Yeah.
remember it coming up, and
Yeah. Allowed them to get open, basically.
it's in the
Right,
file.
no,
you
no,
know.
no,
Yeah.
I'm trying to visualize, I haven't been into the place, so like, I can't visualize, because if you add 10 seats, does that make
Yeah.
the thing cramped, or?
And you might
What
have
we
to,
have, what we
yeah.
have is, right now, we have 4 tables that have chairs, and then we have 4 high-top tables without chairs. So it doesn't count as a seat, was what I was told from the building inspector.
Oh.
So I'd like to add chairs to those tables that don't have seats.
You literally want to add seats.
I mean, it's not bad standing up and having a sandwich with your buddy, but
Yeah.
it'd be nice to have a seat.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, got it. We will check. I mean, I think you've done a good job. You've really been a sort of a good neighbor with the place. You've done the studies, which is what we asked, which is the best possible way to figure out whether
Sorry, I
it's
was
an
a month late, I
issue.
couldn't get the engineer up there.
And so, I mean, I think I hope we can just, we just don't want to end
Yeah.
up in a situation where all of a sudden now people are parking in, you know, on 125.
Right.
You know, that's what we want to avoid. So we don't want it to be like
Oh, I understand
like the
totally.
loft, you know? And no, it's not so much the loft, it's Joe Fish that's got the parking problem. Yeah, so, great, well, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate it, yeah.
We'll be in touch.
All right, thank you so much, have a good night.
Thank you.
Okay, come on up. Thank you so much for coming tonight, we really appreciate it. Yeah.
You got your seat, right?
It just says North Andover.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I got my seats. I got 842 and 843, so I'm excited. That's what happens when you fly Southwest. You gotta get. So, Jean or Rebecca, do you want to tee up the conversation so we have the context here?
Yes, I guess I will. So we have engaged in a agreement with Merrimack Valley Planning Commission to participate in a regional housing plan. It is somewhat unique, and the executive director, Karen Conrad, and Angie Vincent are here to discuss that plan and kind of the methodology and how we're going to go about it. It's coming up fairly quick, so I did ask them to come in as soon as possible, so tonight they were available. We touched base a little bit on it, I think 2 meetings ago. Within the region, there's 15 communities. I believe 11 have agreed to participate. We've signed a memorandum of agreement to kind of hold up our end of this bargain, and they will go through the procedure of it. But the timing of it is fairly good in that it will coincide with the master plan effort.
Okay, that's-
And we'll have a good group of people there, hopefully, to also like run this plan by. But in the end, the plan will be brought to this board as well as the Board of Selectmen for approval prior to going to the state. So-
Great.
Is it the MV Regional Housing Plan? Is that what it is? It
Yes,
does-
it is.
Okay,
Sorry.
it doesn't say North Andover.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, all yours.
Good evening, how are you? I'm Karen Conrad. I'm the relatively new executive director at the Merrimack Valley Planning Commission. And Angela, Vincent, and I are really happy to be here. This is our first time addressing planning board, I think.
Yep, both of us.
But the first of many. Jean did a really good job of summarizing what we're up to. We applied for and were surprised to get a really large grant of $150,000 to organize a regional housing production plan effort. And what that means is it's a first in the state effort by the Department of Housing and Community Development to help communities understand what they need to get to achieving 10% of their housing stock is affordable. So we have 15 communities in our region. 2 already have housing production plans in place, so they said, thank you, no thank you. We'll keep an eye on what you're doing. 1 community hired their own consultant, so we've got the other 12 now. Jean, we're working on Boxford.
Okay.
So we essentially,
You're gonna get Boxford to get to the 10%?
I'm not going to go that far, but I'm just glad they're part of the
But it's good to be part,
conversation.
yeah.
Right. So we convinced DHCD that this would be a good use of the money, because if you were a community trying to get this plan done on your own and you paid a consultant, it would be somewhere in the range of $20,000 to $25,000. So for $150,000 to achieve this kind of status for as many as 12 communities is a great economy of scale. So Rebecca, would you be so kind as, there we go. So I'm really here to say thank you and to answer any questions you may have, but Angela's the queen of this, so I'm gonna turn it over to her.
So if you back up one, as Karen mentioned, the goal of our project is to develop a regional housing plan. And it's not, even though pieces of that will focus on affordability, and the actual chapter itself that we're going to be doing for each community, including North Andover, will serve as a housing production plan and has elements of an affordable housing plan. We're really developing housing for all, for everyone in the Merrimack Valley. So the focus is going to be on every type of housing that we could possibly have to make Merrimack Valley feel like home. And so if you, as Karen also mentioned, we did get several large grants for this project, and we're anticipating we're going to be wrapping most of that up in December. Our timeline is pretty aggressive, but we've been, I think, on track for the most part over the last couple of months, especially working with Jean and her fellow planners throughout the region on pulling together strategies on how we're going to work individually with each of the communities, and then rolling that out both locally and on a regional scale. So as I mentioned, this is going to be a local housing production plan, and there'll be specific elements that we're going to have to include in that, such as a community needs assessment for each community, some goals and strategies on how to address housing, and then priority areas for housing development. Oh, yeah,
Do you take questions during the
absolutely,
presentation?
sure.
I'm just a little concerned on my part that when you use terminology like housing production plan,
Yes.
that may mean something special to you. And I don't understand what that means.
We can do that later, is there a slide?
I didn't have that one specifically,
So
but
essentially, as part of the, zoning act that goes way back, chapter 40B, states that communities should always strive toward having a 10% of their stock as affordable. So to the extent you're not there yet, you should always
Got it.
be planning to put units into production.
Got it.
So I think that's the slang term for production, and we use that all the time.
Right.
So the idea is, even if you achieve 10% at any given moment in time, typically units fall out of the affordable status. Typically, you can deed restrict something for anywhere from 15 to 30 years. So as you produce units, that's great, but as you add market rate units to your total housing count,
Right?
you're
Changes
changing the
the-
dynamic.
Percentage.
Right, exactly. So it's always a changing numbers game. So
Sure.
a community can be over 10% in one given year or at a census count, but with particular developments coming online, you may slip below that. So the idea would be to stay within that range of, within earshot of 10%. So the idea is, if you're not there, you've got a plan in place to get there. And
it.
if the plan is certified and you're making strides toward producing units that are certified as
So-
affordable, you're immune to the 40B product in the sense that you want to
it.
protect yourself.
Maybe smooth out the peaks and valleys.
Exactly.
Projecting forward. So my other question here, and risking the second stupid question.
No stupid questions. This is a tough one.
Yeah, right. So what's the advantage of doing this on a regional basis with 12 community versus North Andover doing it?
Well, I'll let you tackle that, but I'll.
Yeah, so I guess each community doesn't necessarily need a housing production plan, but we encourage them to have that, as Karen said, because it's that plan. It could be a safe harbor for any unwanted 40B developments in the community, especially in locations that you don't necessarily want housing. But for a regional scale, this isn't going to be a housing production plan per se. This is a regional housing plan. So we take the production piece out of it because it is truly going to be housing for everyone. And there are strategies that I think we're going to be able to implement, or at least recommend to be implemented, that will help all of the communities to address housing. So one recently that we've been discussing is, and similar to what she said, there are housing units in communities that fall off because we just can't keep track of them all. DHCD, the Department of Housing and Community Development, usually does a report every year that gives you that information, but having everything else that our planners do in their daily life, it can be a little bit difficult to keep track of that. So one thought that we had as a regional strategy would be to develop a tool that we could actually help you implement and keep track of those housing units, so that you would hopefully avoid having any of them fall off of your inventory. So
And our plan expired in 2012, so the
so
timing is
this
good,
is-
that if we can get this on board.
This is helpful for us.
This is
Yes.
helpful.
It can only be helpful, it can't be hurtful. You
Right.
could adopt a plan, get it certified by the state, and not do anything with it, but you have it in place.
Right.
There's no burden or penalty to
Got
you
it.
for not implementing certain pieces of it.
So I'm sorry I disrupted the
that's okay.
presentation.
No, I
Very
think
helpful.
it's an important
Thank you.
distinction. And
Right, if you held that question to the end, it may get more
I
gummed up.
would have
So
forgotten it long before that.
keep the questions coming.
Thank you.
any others before?
We had a plan until 2012,
Yep.
but then we were still doing 40Bs. Were those part of the plan, or were those, did anybody realize?
Well, we haven't reached our 10%.
But if you said there's a plan in place and you're working towards it, you don't necessarily
You have to create 1/2 of 1% of those units you need to get to 10% in order to protect yourself from a 40B, so
Okay.
to speak. So it could be that there weren't enough units in a given year that were achieved.
Before 2012, because now that the plan expired, there isn't a plan in
Right,
place.
exactly.
Yeah.
But the good news is, because you've done a plan, that'll be one of the first things we look to. If there are elements of the plan you like and that you'd revisit, you'd bring forward again, great. If there are pieces you no longer think fit, they won't move forward. And really, as Angie alluded to, this will be a plan that is locally driven. We're just helping facilitate. This isn't anything coming top-down from our office in Haverhill to North Andover. This will be something developed for the town's use because it's something the town believes in.
Right.
We're
So-
just helping to coordinate from up and up.
So I would anticipate pulling up that 2012 plan, looking at it, what we like, dislike, what is still relevant, and building upon it.
Right.
And I think one more thing I wanted to add, because I love your question about the regional scale. This, even though it originally started as just a regional housing plan, so how do we look at, housing throughout the region, and this focus on more locally based plans that could be approved, where it was kind of an afterthought. Us being able to do this at the local level is also going to look at economies of scale. So something that we could potentially say, for instance, senior housing is coming up a lot in our discussions and our one-on-ones with the planners. So how could we potentially come up with a strategy that would address that on a regional scale, as well as help you implement that locally? So it's just an example, and we're seeing a lot of those so far, and we're hoping that we can come up with some great strategies that actually would be Merrimack Valley tailored, something that will fit everybody here in Merrimack
To
Valley.
back up one step further, what we're charged to do as an organization is to help promote and help assist in the orderly development of the region. So housing is a key component of that. Some people think of us as transportation or environment or economic development, but housing clearly plays into all of that, so it makes sense given our charter.
And you said you're recently in this position?
I am,
Since when?
since January 3rd. The
Welcome.
gentleman
And can I ask where you're coming from?
Sure. I'm a 23-year resident of the town of Andover. I most recently worked for the city of Peabody, before that for the city of Methuen, and before that for a bunch of state agencies. So I've worn a lot of hats.
Not much experience then.
Not for
Kidding.
such an old
Kidding.
lady, no. No,
Thank
so
you.
it's a great fit. The Merrimack
you.
Valley is a wonderful place, and, okay.
Well, we actually have a very long history of work with Merrimack Valley Planning. I remember when, I've been on the planning board for a long time, is we used particularly, like 20-odd years ago, a lot of the resources in planning, the watershed, the lake zoning, and things of that nature, so the members of the team were very instrumental. So it goes back a long way, yeah. Yeah.
Right. And do feel free to add anything or jump in know if you have questions on these tasks. So the next several slides are going to go over just the process that we're going to be using to develop the plan. Some of this is going to be focused on how we're going to work with you locally, and other pieces will be on how you can see this coming together as a regional plan. So we did actually end up asking DHCD, Department of Housing and Community Development, if this was going to be something that we could do for each community, and that these standalone chapters could serve as your official housing production plan that would be certifiable. And this is the first, as Karen mentioned, a first of its type in the state. There have been other regional housing plans, of course, but this is the first time that a regional planning agency has embarked on such a large project where each piece of the plan is going to serve as a standalone document. So they kind of shook their head and said, we've never seen this before, but let's go forward. So as long as the components, as we mentioned, and we'll probably go over again, are in each plan, and it goes through the approval process of the planning board and board of selectmen approval, then it would serve as a certifiable plan. So we did confirm that with them, and then confirmed participation. As we talked about, there are 12 communities that are working with us. The other 3 are not going to be excluded. They'll actually be part of the plan. We won't have specific individual community meetings with them to determine goals and strategies. And we've been doing quite a bit of local outreach and engagement, as we mentioned, meeting with all the planners. And if you go to the next slide, we are also using, and just launched on a soft launch, the tool Co-Urbanize, because we recognize, and actually there is a statistic out there, that 50% of the American population will not attend a public meeting. And so how do we engage those folks in a creative and meaningful way virtually, and this tool allows you to do that. We'd love to have you follow this. This is actually mobile friendly, so it's not an app, so it comes up exactly like you're seeing it on the screen here. And this question that we're posing right now, where do we need more housing, and what type of housing should we be building there, is asking people to put a pin in a location, wherever that might be, if it's, you know, downtown North Andover or downtown Haverhill, and then say what types of categories they think we need. So up there is affordable, single-family, multifamily, and senior housing. So we're hoping to start a good conversation. We've got some buzz going on the left-hand side, and actually on the comment section, and this isn't an active link, but there's a whole bunch of information on this site that gives you more details about the project, but allows you different ways to comment as well. And we will be launching a new website that will be our kind of umbrella for this project. I did not put the link up here yet because we're launching it in the next couple of days, but that will be on our regular site. So you'll be able to find anything and everything that you need as part of this project.
If you go on that, you can look at those projects in Tewksbury using it, Nashua, New Hampshire, that are very active sites if you want to take a look at that.
Yeah, it's a great engagement tool. We were trying to find alternative ways to reach the people that wouldn't come to a meeting, who we kind of have termed the usual suspects. There are lots of people whose input we really want, and age groups we're just not hitting. So we're thinking this may be an interesting way to get some feedback.
How do they find their way to this tool?
That's a good question.
Yeah, lots of different ways.
I mean, is this a push or a pull? Is it like a website, it sits there unless someone goes to it?
It could be like that. We're going to do a lot of invitations. Basically, if we have a large stakeholder list that we've been gathering through our one-on-one meetings with the planners. So all of the planning board members will be invited in every community. Our commissioners, Merrimack Valley commissioners, as well as boards of selectmen, developers in the region, affordable housing, nonprofits in general, I should say. So there's actually quite a big list that we're going to be engaging and inviting those. And then we'll also be asking our partners to do the same, especially the folks who are advocates of housing or want to be involved in this conversation. So it is sort of like that. Luckily, as Jean mentioned, if you're a co-urbanized participant already, the great thing about it is it tells you where new projects are starting up. So folks in Tewksbury will probably hear about it. I'm not sure. Who knows if they'll participate, but I've been following the conversations there in Nashua just for giggles to see, how things are going with them. And, it's a good way for me to learn what kinds of questions are going to gain some traction as well. So. As we mentioned, we will be investigating all of the existing plans, whether it's a master plan, current housing production plan, or affordable housing plan, or housing plan in general. Lawrence has a comprehensive housing study to make sure that that's used as a foundation for our discussions for our community meeting with you. We are collecting a lot of data right now, mostly American Community Survey data, but also on housing in general, not just in the region either, but throughout the state, and how we can compare this region to the rest, have some sort of benchmark. And then we are, as our first kind of regional engagement strategy, we will be doing an open house on May 24th. And we're having that at the L. Hefney Center, which is in Lawrence. If you haven't been to that site yet, the NECO's new complex, it's beautiful. We're going to have most of the third floor of the conference room space up there, and we're making this we're calling it an open house without a pun, but it really will be a self-led activities in the beginning with focus and facilitated conversations around housing needs in the Merrimack Valley. So we're hoping that that invitation will also go out to you, and we'll be discussing that at the community meeting as well. Another week. So we're right now also in the process of looking at goals and accomplishments. We want to make sure that these first initial conversations with the communities are taking into consideration any goals and accomplishments that you've had from your recent plans. And as we mentioned, and if you go to the next slide, we'll also be making sure that this is consistent and aligned with your work with RKG for your master plan. We had a call with them last week, and thanks to Jean for helping to facilitate that discussion on how that first meeting with the community should go. And so we're going to have a mix of questions that RKG usually uses to launch their master planning efforts. They have what they call interviews or focus groups, and so I think we'll be melding kind of our approach to make sure that they're getting what they need and we're getting what we need as far as helping you to craft that housing plan for yourself. we recognize that people go through planning fatigue, and we'd rather not have any confusion, especially around housing, and this is an important thing for communities. So I think aligning our efforts and making sure there's consistency between if there is an actual chapter for housing and this plan, how those two work together.
I have a question of Jean and Angie. Do you know when that first community workshop might be held?
The local
Yeah.
one? No, not yet.
We're still working on that. So as I mentioned, there's the open house pitch. So NECO at the El Hefney Center. Have you been to the El Hefney Center yet for anything?
If you've been in North Andover for a while, you know it as the former in-town mall.
Oh, okay.
Anybody know that?
Across from
yeah.
Wendy's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Try to figure
And the
out.
post office, right.
Yeah.
So we're really hoping for a good attendance. This is going to be posted and actually is already on our Facebook page, and we're getting some good traction there. But there'll be a formal invitation to everyone about this next week. So our next strategies, or excuse me, tasks, I should say, for this project are to do the local community needs assessments, and that's, we already discussed this a little bit, that's gonna be our alignment with you and RKG, or sorry, with the town and RKG, to make sure that those are consistent. We'll then do a regional open house, a second regional open house, probably timeframe August, September, to start digging into the goals. So with the information that we get from the El Hefney Center on May 24th, we're going to compile that and say, what are we hearing about what true goals should be for regional housing development, and how do we do affordability? How do we plan for millennials? How do we plan for seniors? So that also will be posted very largely, and you'll find that on our website and on Co-Urbanize when that's ready. Then we'll go into regional housing strategies, and with focus on a local workshop again with you all to look at goals and strategies for your specific community for North Andover.
A couple of questions. As part of this process, would you bring developers into the process?
That's been a conversation in a couple of communities that we've been in, and we figured that was, especially for the ones you've worked with quite a bit.
The reason why I mention it is that developers, in order to put in something that's not just, an additional single-family house there, like we had a project that recently got approved for some commercial rate rental that's relatively high-end, and they did an enormous amount of market research. They really thought through what their market was. And that strikes me as something you really need to do, because you could come up with all these wonderful housing types, but if they're not appropriate for the area in which you live, so what? And so some of these folks, I think, have a good understanding of what's going on in the marketplace and what is, where there is a demand for certain type of housing.
Yeah,
And
we're hoping that
also the one thing that ties in is the cost of building.
Right.
If you need over 55 housing and you're thinking that over 55 is in a $300,000 price range, but the land cost prohibits that, you can't build it,
They provide a dose
Well,
of reality
yeah.
in the conversation.
Sometimes, yeah.
Right, I mean, ultimately, it gets back to, as part of your process, the overall economics of what you do, and, you can deal with affordable housing on the demand side or the supply side. I don't think it ever works on the demand side, giving people money to buy housing because you're just gonna chase yourself. But I think, as Lynn said, it all has to get done on the supply side. And a lot of it has to do with density, and I think one of the advantages of having 12 or 13 communities is to see how 12 or 13 communities deal with density.
There are a lot of similarities, and there certainly are a lot of
Yeah.
uniqueness.
Yeah.
We have, when we meet with each community's planner or liaison to this effort, we specifically said, who should we invite to that first community needs assessment? And we've asked specifically for names of developers that you think would be appropriate to the room.
Yeah.
Other people that come up in this conversation, Council on Aging folks, they tend to know a lot about that particular population, and people like that. So we're looking specifically to get those people in the room.
So other people, we've got the Affordable Housing Trust, certainly, the Housing Authority, possibly,
Right.
Council on Aging, ZBA, they deal with the
Yeah,
40B. I would love to have somebody from the planning board.
Real
as,
estate's a good
Yeah.
realtor, broker.
Yeah, we've had some great ideas so far, but we're open to others. We think the larger the stakeholder net that we can cast, the better. Because if they can hear from the horse's mouth what we need, and then also give us that dose of reality that you just said,
Yeah.
I think that that's
Well,
gonna
I
make for a
mean,
more.
do you have Elder Services at Merrimack Valley involved in this at all? Because they've done a number of housing
Elders,
projects.
right. Are they in Lowell?
No, they're in Lawrence.
They're in Lawrence?
Right.
Elder Services?
Yeah, Elder
Okay.
Services, yeah.
Okay, I thought they were in Woodstock.
Roseanne, the executive director, just retired,
Okay,
yeah.
great. That's perfect.
Brennan Rose has been doing some of the.
Oh, yeah, Bread and Roses,
Mhm.
yeah,
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 yeah.
that's right, yeah.
And all the community development corporations will be invited
Yeah.
as well. Not that there's that many in our region, but still,
Yeah.
it's good to have. Yeah, so our final task here for this is to prepare the regional, well, at least part of the, is to prepare the regional plan. And just to give you a snapshot of what we've done for our, kind of our, one of our first deliverables, just to see where people were,
North Andover
I should
shows
say.
8.5 on the map.
Yep.
That's as hard for you to see as me, but I cheated and saw it earlier.
So overall, the region is actually over 10% right
In
now.
aggregate.
Yep, in aggregate.
What's Boxford?
Boxford,
42?
0.95.
I was giving them way too much credit.
Yeah.
I think West Newbury is 2 point. Yeah, West Newbury is 2 point.
Gotcha.
Yep. So this, we'll keep updating this as well as we get any new numbers, but the biggest update is probably gonna be, in a year. That's when DHCD usually takes a look at these,
Yeah.
but we're hoping that maybe a strategy like somebody like a regional planning agency taking the lead on monitoring this will keep these updated on a more regular basis.
So timing-wise, if we could develop the local stakeholders, the ideal would be to have them attend the regional housing
To the extent they
event,
could,
and
yeah.
then possibly schedule the local one by mid-June.
I think so.
That'd be
great.
Before we lose people to the summer, that would be
Right.
ideal.
Yep.
So, but
And
I'd
that
love
could
to
be-
have that list developed and accepted prior to the regional one, so they come and see the big picture before focusing locally on our plan.
One question that I have, it may be a leading question, but is, one of the characteristics of North Andover is that it has an enormous amount of, what I'm going to say, very moderately priced housing that is not considered to be affordable, yet it's market rate housing that is affordable.
It's small
And
and
has
affordable.
been affordable for, forever, just because that's the price range these things are in. Do you look at that, and why doesn't North Andover get credit for that?
For a unit to count, it has to be deed restricted, which means it's only eligible to persons of a certain income. So then you have to run that person who buys that home through an income eligibility process. So typically that means a subsidy and a subsidizing agency running that unit through that process. So sometimes it's burdensome, most times the folks don't income qualify.
They
So-
don't, but
right.
I guess the frustration would be here people create affordable housing with no subsidies, and we get no credit for it.
It's ironic because you have lots of small A that I like to call it small A affordable,
Yeah.
but not certified deed
Certified,
restricted as
fair enough,
affordable.
yeah.
But they're actually less money than the affordable housing.
Yeah.
They can be, you're right.
No, the ones we have in town generally for the, number of bedrooms is, some of them are significantly less.
Yeah.
We have at least about 1,000 units like that.
Yeah, I mean,
Because just the time they were built, the style of them and everything like
Right.
that.
Because we did a project in North Andover with, through community preservation, with NOAA, which is the big.
Yep. Neighborhood,
And they were very sharp, very professional, but if you looked at the total cost of that project divided by the number of units, it's not affordable. The fees were affordable, but the cost was not affordable.
it's counterintuitive.
Yeah, that's what I mean. And, well, you could kind of see why what was happening is a lot of people made a lot of money on those things. There were a lot of ways to make money, just, between the tax credits and everything else, so that's.
It's exciting that North Andover is a CPA community because you have that bucket of money specifically
Yeah.
for affordable housing. That's
And there's a Affordable Housing Trust too in North Andover, so.
Would you recommend someone from CPC being on as a stakeholder? Would that be
Well, I
beneficial?
mean, I think that, what I would say is that Mary Beth Susi maybe, because she's
I
the
have
housing
her down
authority.
for the Housing Authority,
yeah,
and Laura E.
yeah.
Burzlaff has expressed interest from the
Yeah,
Affordable Housing
so,
Trust.
Yeah, she would definitely be, yeah,
So,
she probably, as much as anybody, would be an important person for
yeah,
this.
and she's definitely said she'd
Yeah.
commit once we establish this list. But
Yeah.
CPC is another one I had on my list
Yep.
as potential, if you thought there'd be benefit to that.
Yeah, I think, yeah, or maybe Terry.
Terry.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's a good idea.
So we'll culminate this project with the final regional open house, which will basically be a presentation of the plan. We're still working on the format of some of these open houses, but we take ideas.
Yeah.
And we hope that you like the first one. And then we'll come back to each community, as we mentioned, in order for it to be a certifiable housing production plan, it will need to be presented and approved by you and the Board of Selectmen. So we're anticipating that will not be within the calendar year, because we want to focus on getting the plan up and running and moving. And so we'll probably come back January timeframe, because the holidays are tough to come before boards anyways. So we'll give you that respite in December and come back to you in January
Yeah.
when those plans are done. And then it needs to go to DHCD for final approval, and we've worked very closely with Phil DiMartino, and so he's going to be monitoring this process very closely, and hopefully we'll be attending our open houses as well. So we're hoping that will actually grease the skids a little bit for us, for all the communities, I should say, when we're done. And we are keeping very active with this project and others on Facebook and on Twitter, so we hope that you follow us if you use social media, and otherwise.
And if not, we'll keep our website robust, and
Yes.
it'll lead you to that
Yeah.
engagement tool, co-urbanize.
Yep.
You won't be able to get away from us.
No,
Yeah.
we're trying to put our tentacles out everywhere.
Right.
I get a lot of emails.
At any point in this process, if you have questions, you can certainly reach out directly to us or through Jean or whatever works best for you.
Yeah, great.
We're not far.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for participating.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Congratulations on
loaning
the
us
grant.
these people. Thank you.
Thanks. We're pretty excited.
Yes, just once.
So what do we have, minutes?
We have, no, actually, the CIP.
Oh, the CIP,
warrant
that's
article.
right, I
So
forgot.
again,
I
this is a
totally forgot.
non-zoning article. What I'd like to present is somewhat clarification on the scope of this line item.
Right, I found out
Yeah.
myself.
So the work being proposed in the coming fiscal year includes the construction phase of the streetscape improvements from Main Street intersection through and including the Elm High and Water Street intersection, continuing on to Clarendon Street. So it's the entire run of Water Street, and it includes the streetscape, pavement of the road, and lighting. So there was a little confusion centered around the intersection at the
Right,
last
so
time,
it
but the
was
scope
more
of the
than that,
project was
yeah.
more than that.
Yeah, that's-
So
yeah.
it is a non-zoning article, and the vote tonight is whether it's favorable or unfavorable action on the CIP budget. I didn't bring the line items, hopefully we still have those.
Want to make a
Somewhere.
motion?
Motion, favorable action, CIP budget?
Well, certain line items, I
Whatever the
apologize,
line
Peter.
items are.
Whatever they are that we
Yes,
identified the
yes.
previous meeting.
Cardack says,
Okay.
so, do you want to second it?
24 second.
Yes.
I'm sorry?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Done.
Good, thank you.
Done.
Another very related topic, actually. There's a letter, I think everybody received in hard copy as well. If you have any comments related to this, you can send me an email. We have a site visit on Thursday. So there has been a filing with the Mass Housing Partnership for a project eligibility for the Sutton Street redevelopment at 505 Sutton Street, which is the Knights of Columbus. This is a 40B proposal for 164 residential units. We are meeting on site to kind of go through the proposal.
What's the size of the property?
Boy, I didn't look it up. I want to say either 4 to 6 acres.
Okay, well, that's what I was
I
trying to
forget.
get.
I did
mean,
not look it up.
didn't-
We can look it up quickly. I think it's
It's a lot
just
of
over
units.
4.
That's a lot of
Yeah,
units,
so
4
I-
acres, yeah.
It's a lot of units even for 4 acres.
I have not seen the plans yet, but I heard some parking under and other on the development itself. But we have the opportunity to respond to this memo. If you have any concerns or whatnot, you can certainly send them to me, and we'll provide a comprehensive response. As far as I'm aware, Eric Kafori is attending the ZBA meeting next week to discuss the production plan, the housing plan.
1.5 acres and 2.42.
What was the first number?
First one with the actual
Yep.
building is 1.5,
And 242?
and the second one is 2.4.
Is, what's the is the property?
So it's approximately 4 acres. It's both of those parcels combined.
Oh, it's both of
Yeah.
them.
So it's approximately 4 acres.
So there's houses behind it, right?
Yeah, Surrey Drive is the abutting residential area,
Ooh,
and China
yeah.
Blossom to the other side.
Yeah, right, yeah. But I bet the people in Surrey Drive will really be happy about this.
Some of them have already seen flags and have already called.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I didn't realize that, I was just visualizing it was just the open lot. Yeah, I didn't realize there was more. Got it, okay.
okay. So the meeting's Thursday. If anybody does want to attend, you can certainly contact me. I believe it's at 11, but I
I
can
haven't
confirm
heard
it.
this yet, I didn't realize it was in there.
That's fine. It just came
What,
in, so
meeting for when or for what? What's-
we actually walked the parcel.
Just to walk the
Yeah,
parcel?
yeah,
Okay.
and
When
look at
is-
the development.
When is the walk of the parcel?
I will email you. I believe it's Thursday at 11, but I'll confirm it. It might be 11:30, I'm not positive. So, but I will send a confirming email. Okay, minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the April 18, 2017 meeting minutes.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
I'll make a motion to approve the April 25th, 2017 meeting minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Anything else?
Nope.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.